Welcome to the Growth Whisperers Podcast, where everything that we talk about is about building enduring great companies. I'm Brad Giles, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Kevin Lawrence. G'day, Kevin. How are you doing today?
You know what, Brad? I am doing great. It's a beautiful, beautiful day up here in Canada. Sun is shining. We're enjoying the end of our summer season, and yeah, it's a great day, actually, a really great day.
Nice to hear. Nice to hear. So tell me, what are we talking about today? What's on your mind? What's on our mind today to pull apart?
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about the advantages of being simple, or a simpleton, or keeping it simple, stupid, the old acronym KISS. Talk about kissing in a work setting, not exactly where we're going with this, but actually the complexity of simplicity is really what we're going to dig into, and how it's an advantage for companies as they're growing if they can manage the complexity of simplicity. And we're going to have some fun with that and some examples. I'm really looking forward to it.
I don't understand the complexity of simplicity. Can you make that a bit simpler?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll quote the wonderful Mark Twain, who said, one of my favorite quotes, "I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time."
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
To write succinctly takes a lot more time than to blah, 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 blah. And just, fill an email with 400 words actually is a lot easier than 36 words that exactly make your point in, 4.7 seconds. And that takes it's a skill, it's mastery to be able to manage the complexity and boil it down into simplicity.
Well, you've really got to understand something. You've really got to understand something deeply to articulate it simply. Any fool can make something more complex, but making something simple,
they often do.
And they often do. Making something simple is so important. And here's the thing. I heard this quote recently that I'm going to repeat to you. People with a lot of intellectual horsepower, they want to use that. They feel that their capabilities are wasted if they don't use that. So when they see simple tactics, simple strategies, simple approaches, they feel like they're wasting their efforts. They feel like they're wasting their time.
And it's beneath who they are and their education and their pedigree and all these other things. It's like if they were to draw 3 simple circles in 2 words, it would not be a fair reflection of who they are and what they know and where they've been. And I'm empathizing with that.
Yeah. Ego is the enemy. Ego is the enemy of everything that you want and everything that you do. But simplicity is so valuable. It's almost like they need to prove by the complexity and the depth of the information that they're presenting to you that they are capable of doing that. When in actual fact, it's like everyone around them is looking, thinking, well, why? You don't need to do it like that. Why are you doing it like that? You need to make it simple.
Yes, because it's impressive, and it's almost like it's like a performer that's exerting a lot of energy and working hard and doing all that stuff. There's something impressive about the exertion.
Yeah.
But yet a true master can do it with 1/10 of the energy and sometimes 1/10 the time. And I'll give you an example, a metaphor. Let's take chefs.
Yeah.
If you're learning to cook and you want to make something really flavorful, and I remember doing this, me and my buddies once, we made chili for a chili cook-off. Mm-hmm. And this is here in Canada. It was for part of a political group that we were experimenting with, and there was a chili cook-off. So we did it. We put like 47 different ingredients in our chili, including 3 different types of hot pepper and hot sauce. I mean, this chili had a bite.
Yeah.
I think we did fairly well in the competition, but it was like, we didn't know what we're doing. We figured the more we throw in, the better we're going to do. And yet, by contrast, I've got a great friend in the Middle East named Ed. Ed, you've met Ed.
I know Ed.
Ed is an Italian guy living and working in the Middle East. That's where we met. He is a true Italian cook. He is some of the best dishes in my life have been in Ed's kitchen. And great stories, a bottle of wine, and some amazing food. We got to know each other very well there. But I remember this pasta he made once. It was fresh pasta, olive oil, and chilies. 3 ingredients. And it blew your mind. It was so good.
Yeah.
But an amateur would have like 14 ingredients in that thing, trying to pump it up, make it good.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're talking about. One of the best pasta dishes I have ever had.
Yeah.
Had 3 ingredients in some crazy Italian guy's kitchen. And
I've got an example do you want to close that sentence?
No, I think that's it. It's just
okay.
But that's the simplicity that comes from mastery and really knowing what you're doing and not overdoing it or overcomplicating it.
Yeah. So the world, I guess, the center of the world for tech is Silicon Valley. Okay. The center of brisket is Texas. Okay, I think
yes,
we may
tech and brisket. Okay, I like how this is going.
Well, there may be people who would disagree with that, but it's they're pretty famous for cooking brisket.
I would agree. Texas is another state in the U.S. Memphis. Memphis is also known for barbecue and brisket, but we would have to have a live taste tests, Brad, to be able to choose if either Memphis or one of the cities in Texas was better. But we don't have that option, so do continue. Yes,
Texas brisket has a rub, which is just salt and pepper, and people line up. People literally get to the venues at 6 or 7 a.m. and line up like 50 people deep to get a piece of brisket that's been slow cooked over a fire with salt and pepper on it, and that's it. It's simple.
Just salt and pepper?
Just salt and pepper. That is the Texas rub.
It's not dipped in barbecue sauce with 47 spices.
Well, they do a barbecue sauce. That's a separate thing. But the rub, some of the rubs that you get elsewhere are incredibly complex.
Yes.
But Texas brisket is salt and pepper. Now, that's not even talking about the sauces, but even their sauces are simple. This is a principle that applies across. So let's bring it back.
So what we need. So what we're saying is you need a simple Italian pasta dish with a nice Italian pasta with some American brisket, and then now you're set for a simple, beautiful meal. That's really where we're getting to.
And the taste will be fantastic. But those people know how much salt and pepper. They know how much olive oil, how much chili. And so there is depth in the knowledge behind it.
And the temperature and all the other things about how they're doing the brisket, which I have no clue. Yes.
And so how does this apply to building enduring great companies?
That is the question. Well, we got the food part covered. But the same thing, if you think about it, as companies grow, they are complex by nature because of all the moving parts, different employee needs, systems, processes, customer needs, etc. And from the work that we do, usually when we go into companies, either they have no plans and systems, or they have all kinds of things, but they're so damn confusing that people can't get the benefit from them. Yeah. So the complexity overweights the value of the system. So even though they might have detailed processes and handbooks and the complexity of those does not enable people to do their job better on a daily basis. And there's some real smart people who may have developed those policies and processes and put thought into it. But what they didn't have is the ability to simplify it and boil it down so it's easier for the people doing the work to do the work well and efficiently. And that's the root. An example I'll share, and Brad, I know you have lots, is when we look at people's strategic plans. or the goals or the way they explain things. Like one of my pet peeves is what I call kitchen sink objectives, right? It's like something that's going to improve customer service. And then it's got 14 different projects or measures. It's like, we're going to do everything to make the customer happy. Well, that doesn't work because you can't do everything well. It's almost like instead of just, we are going to enhance salt and pepper, it's like salt and pepper and garlic and hickory and parsley and cilantro and then 42 other ingredients. Well, it's just way too much and it makes a mess. So it's keeping it to that salt and pepper simple is a great way, probably from what you've shared there, Brad, to put it. And we often end up trying to boil things down. So there's just a few things that we do, but we do them unbelievably well. And then it's easier for people to, one, stay focused. And then two, when we apply it to systems, it's easier to actually do your job.
It is. And so I was meeting with a person the other day and I said to him, so what's been really kind of transformational? No, I remember what it was. They read my book and I said, so what was it that you took out of it? Like 55,000 words. What was the one thing? And they said, you know what it was? It brought me back to, I've got to have 2 KPIs per person, and translate that. I've got to make it simple. So, which is good, which was fantastic. I wanted to know what did he get, and what he got is, I've been trying to make everything too complex. For each role, there's got to be 2. In every area, there is a burden of complexity that it's almost like people make things more complex for no added value.
It's not almost. They do.
Yeah, it's human nature. You look at the parliaments and governments look at adding new laws as being beneficial, which many times they are, but they get more complex and more complex. And then what about in 100 years? If we've got 100,000 new laws that no one even knows, it's just human nature to add more things on.
Why do people make things more complex than is in many cases effective? Often. Yes. Why?
Well,
tell me the answer, Brad. I want to know, please.
I far be it from me to know the answer, but I will offer an opinion.
Sure.
If I exclude the government, I think maybe even include it. Look, I think in a company, it's emotional junk. I think that inside your head, inside people's heads, they look at something and they think, that would be better if we did that. Or they look for things that are going on rather than looking and thinking because they want to make things better. And that's driven inside by some kind of emotional junk, perhaps. That's an elaborate theory, I know.
So what you're saying is because of an emotional junk or emotional reaction they're having, they think that this becomes really important and they start adding stuff is what I'm hearing.
Yes, that's right. So they're making things more complex than they need to be. Let me give you an example. There's a company here in Australia who will remain nameless that I don't work with, but I've seen their core values. They've got 21 core values.
Yeah. They've got none.
They got a dictionary on the wall. I've got a photo of it that I can't show you.
Yeah, that's idiot. That's just like, then you have no core values.
It's crazy. It's crazy, right? Now, how did they get to a point where they had 21 core values? My thinking is someone thought, well, we've got to have that one as well. And what was it that prompted them to think we've got to have that one as well, and that one and that one and that one?
It was a popularity contest or something where there's like make everyone feel good contest.
And that was driven by something emotional.
And a facilitator or someone who doesn't understand core values leading the process, guaranteed. The word core values means the ones at the center, which is usually 3, 4, or 5. So not only is it's someone got excited, they wanted to make sure everyone's word got included. We see this in purpose statements or visions or missions. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to be a great company and care for people of all, races and backgrounds, and take good care of our customers and be an employer of choice and continue to grow and be in every continent on the planet, and the world will be happy. It's like, okay, so you're going to do everything and nothing.
And do you know what I say when they say that? I just let the silence take the room, and I say, look, I'm sorry, I was just a little bit sick in my mouth.
Like, yeah, you're nicer than you're nicer than I am. I tend to have an outburst, which might be emotional junk. So here's the theory. I like what you're saying there, Brad. And here's what I think. I think that in many, many of those cases, they actually haven't taken time to think. Because it requires it's like they didn't even finalize their first draft. It was not taking time to think.
Yeah. So I think that what we're saying there is that you really need to deeply, deeply understand exactly what it is that you're talking about. They didn't take time to think. Yes, absolutely agree. They didn't deeply understand it. And that was the premise at the beginning of this episode is you can only make things simple if you deeply understand them. And
simplicity is an output of mastery.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And like, I don't want this to sound like an advert, but that's why you need someone who knows what they're doing, facilitating your offsites, because we do this all day, every day. This is all we do. You know what I was doing yesterday? This. You know what we're going to be doing next week? This. It's. Do you know one of the things?
I was explaining to someone. I had, we had a conversation about the future of an industry in a strat planning meeting that we did. And one of the executives is sort of like, well, how can you say that with such confidence, Kevin? You don't have any facts. I'm like, well, I've been through 5 industry disruptions. I know what it sounds like, looks like, feels like, and I've studied digital disruption deeply with some of the best consultants in the world. So I don't know for sure, but I have my guess is about 10 times more educated than most people because of just what I've been exposed to. And I didn't want to say that. It wouldn't have been played in the meeting.
Yeah.
But it's because I am not a master, but I'm closer than most, and I have had many masters I've studied with around these topics. And again, it's not I still might not be right, but it's this mastery piece, and that's where the simplicity, because when at a level of, if you look at most things at a level of mastery, things are actually quite easy, obvious, and simple. And I will take something, for example, in the world of cars and driving, which I've talked about before, a passion of mine. I've had some amazing coaches over the years and become quite competent. And I know when I am doing my best driving, it's so easy and almost effortless. The car just dances.
Yeah.
It's not like grinding and screaming. It's just kind of floating and doing its thing. And that's like mastery actually looks mastery looks deceivingly simple, but it's only because of the mastery. And the challenge is there's the learning your craft to become a master, right? And that's, whether it's a facilitator or someone helps you with strategy or fixing teams or whatever it is. But then the other point is putting the time into it. And I'll give you another example. So we just finished an annual planning session, part 1, for 25 people in a company, executives and leaders. The meeting went very smooth. There was very good alignment with the people as the output of the meeting. It looked like it was very simple. Once the meeting was going, there was work to do, but I wasn't sweating and frantic and everything. It was actually quite simple. But we'd spent an incredible amount of hours up front preparing for it.
Yeah.
So the amount of work we did up front and debating with the executive and CEO and myself internally with my team and working it out and back and forth and creating templates and using tools, it made it look very simple and fairly easy to get the work accomplished.
Yeah.
But there's like the equivalent of running probably 2,000 strategic planning meetings.
Yes.
And hundreds of hours of working on this new technology Mural that you introduced us to that's been working very, very well. And hundreds of hours on Zoom and, a lot of hours of prep for that. Oh, it looked like it worked. It worked of course, it worked very, very well.
Yeah.
And it was very simple. Very simple. But very hard that is not an easy thing to replicate for someone who doesn't have those experiences.
Yeah, I have a similar story. Thinking about a client, we've been working together for 6 or 7 years, and we've built all of these strong foundations. Like, we knew the values, we'd stress tested them, we knew all of the components of the strategy, we knew the differentiators, everything was locked in. And then we got to a point where we worked on the flywheel by Jim Collins to build the momentum in the business. And it seemed really simple. We put it together and it worked, and we stress tested it a bit and we changed a couple of things. But I think the people in the room were maybe not stunned, but they were really surprised at how simply it all plugged together. And I said, the only reason it made sense, the only reason it plugged together is because of the previous 6 or 7 years work that we've done getting us into this point.
Yes.
So that we understand all of this so well. And now we make it really simple through the application of an introduction of a flywheel, but it's the depth of knowledge that the team has got that gets us into this point.
It is. So the depth of knowledge and knowing is one. And then the second, as I mentioned, is that editing process that Mark Twain talks about. Because to deliver, whether it's a great strat planning session, a great keynote or other speech, or a great business case, or a great marketing strategy, there is an incredible amount of boiling down and simplifying that you need to do, and editing down. And it takes a lot of time. Like, as we figured out, when we do training programs and we deliver training, it's at least 10 hours of preparation for every single hour of delivery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of the boiling down and boiling down and boiling and simplifying. So it's knowing what the heck you're doing and the work and labor to get there and to get it to the simple levels. And that's why processes in companies are often complicated, because it would take a couple hundred hours to simplify it.
Yeah, totally. And so this plays out in our strategy work that we're doing with clients. For example, in the statements that we build within the plans that we build, something like a brand promise or something, perhaps even like a core purpose, we've got to make it simple. And I remember the first business plan that I wrote. I remember the first business plan that I wrote maybe 20 something years ago for my own business. And that was very much, it was thick and it was detailed. And I took it to my accountant at the time and he said, this is the most complex and comprehensive business plan that I've ever seen from a startup. I can't see how you're going to fail, which was lovely, right? And it's a great story to tell. But it was too complex. I did what the business schools said you should do, which it was so complex that I read it and I understood it. It made sense to me. But yeah, that's partly not the job, because part of the job of building a plan is communicating the plan simply to those who weren't a part of the planning process. And you touched on that earlier.
Right. Yes.
And we've got to be mindful that no matter how much you understand as the CEO or even as a leadership team member, communicating something like a brand promise can very easily sound like a tagline, which is one of the greatest wastes of ink known to man. Taglines.
Yes, agree.
That people can just go, oh, that's a tagline, and they're thinking back to Mad Men type stuff, the TV show. But it's the depth and the simplicity and the communication that really matters.
And that's why we both love this thing called the one-page strategic plan. That's, out of the book Scaling Up that I did a lot of work on, and always remember those interviews with those 50 CEOs around the world that had scaled very, very well. But everything in the damn thing is so simple. Lots of it comes from Jim Collins. I mean, the source material, and a lot of it is Jim Collins and his awesome, awesome work. But you talk about something like a brand promise. To get that right, brand promise, for those that aren't familiar, is I prefer to call it the customer promise. Because brand promise takes you down the path of marketing, which it's not meant to be. It's almost what do we take a stand for delivering to our customers? Tangible things we can measure that we want to make sure that all of our strategic decisions support or fit into.
Yeah.
So it's actually not about brand. It's more about what we promise to our key customer or consumer. And it's really helpful. Now, most people end up with big convoluted taglines that don't really add a lot of value. We don't need another tagline or a slogan, usually. But when you get those 3 strategic pillars of what we stand for, damn, it's powerful. Yeah, it's hard work. Simple. It's simple. And most people have a hard time getting there. It's easy to come up with 7, 14. It's easy to copy somebody else's. Slogans don't take a lot of, they're quite easy to come up with. But nailing what you stand for that makes you unique and is meaningful to your customer is, that really kind of identifies your sweet spot. That's darn hard. And same things, getting the purpose right. Or, even there's lots of things, and in the work that we do, we try to get things in a sentence. Yeah. To identify your big investments and to come up with 3 or 4 big investments over the next 3 to 5 years to double your business in size and strength, and to express those in a meaningful, smart sentence. Man, it's hard. I can give you 10 easily, but to boil that down, and not only to boil it down communication-wise, but to throw out all the stuff that you say is secondary or doesn't even need to happen. Yeah, that's work. That's time. That's debate.
Absolutely. And it's got to align with the customer's need and the opportunity in the market to be strategic. So you unless you understand the customer, unless you understand what they actually need, unless you've done a lot of the work behind the scenes to really get that, and you can then understand it, articulate it, monetize it, and then communicate it to your people, it's a struggle. It's almost like it's one of the milestones in the process that one uses is, are we making this simple enough? I'm writing a book at the moment, and it's something it's a thought that's passing through my head all the time. Am I making this simple enough? Have I got too many tools? Have I got too many explanations? And that's the problem when people write books is the reader wants a thin book that's simple.
Yes.
The writer,
yes, they do.
Yeah. They think, I want to be able to read.
The writer wants a thick book to show how smart they are and represent their brand and show how well they have leveraged the education and experiences they've had. So yeah, the customer wants 10, 20,000 words, and the writer wants 50 to 100,000 words.
Yeah. And that's the same thing that we're talking about all the way through. It's coming back to emotional junk. That's what's driving people to make things more complex than they need to be.
Brad, you made me think about in design and architecture, which is something I appreciate. I have no skill in it. But I can tell when I walk into a hotel or a home I have this game I play with. How many times has the architect done this before? And the best architects, everything is so simple, and it's just like, of course, it's simple and easy and elegant. Like there's this home I was looking at in the area here, and it was a home on a hillside, beautiful view, and the architect put the elevator in the middle of the house on a view home. Now it's cool, it's got an elevator, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm like, don't think this is a highly experienced architect, because an experienced architect would have known putting a big physical obstacle in the middle of a view room might not be the best choice. And I many times I've come across this. And then when you see, and it's design of any form, but when you see design that is simple and elegant and just like, of course, that's hard. Like even auto design, hotel design, all of that stuff. And then you get the young, keener architects or designers, and they're trying really, really hard. And you can see all these things where they're trying really, really hard. And they complicate things. Even though it might be impressive or it might look good and it's good for the ego, balancing out your emotional junk, over time, with mastery, they can learn about less is more. Simple is the way to win. Complexity is not scalable or executable.
Yeah. And we spoke before about the 80-20 Pareto rule. I love that rule. I have all of the leadership teams I work with read that article and really understand about that and how it affects you every day. But I think that what we're talking about here is something a little bit different, and I'd be happy to be corrected, in that what we're saying is it's more mastery. It's more, you've got to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. You've got to understand all of the things behind that. And then the job to be done is to make things, to make it simple, to make your plan simple.
Both. The plan or the system or the execution needs to be as simple as possible. And that requires a high degree of mastery. But just because you have mastery does not mean you get simplicity. Yeah. Right? It's like there are two levers you need to work together.
Yeah.
Mastery gives you a better chance of creating simplicity. I mean,
yes.
Not being you can create simplicity when you're not a master, but that will be simplistic. It'll be simple, but not near as effective. So not being a master and focusing on simplicity is not a bad strategy. You don't know what you don't know, and you'll miss stuff or get stuff wrong.
Yeah.
Mastery on its own doesn't mean you get simplicity, but mastery focused on simplicity, there's a magical combination there.
I love that. I think it was Einstein who said something like any fool can make something more complex, but a genius will make it simpler.
Yep.
I think it's also in what we see in mid-market companies. It's almost maybe not a job to be done, but it's something that we need to keep front of mind. Am I making this more complex for no reason? And I go back to the example of Jeff Bezos. Now, one of the richest people in the world, but he's a pretty smart fella. If you look at his background, he's had some pretty interesting jobs that you wouldn't say he's a slouch intellectually. And then you look at their strategy, you look at their flywheel, you look at what they do. There is nothing overly complex about it. They've got a deep understanding of what they're doing, and then they're making it really simple. You go to their flywheel. I don't have it in front of me, but it's something like offer lower prices.
I have it right here.
Offer lower prices, and then attract more customers, and then
more customer visits, which gets you more third-party sellers to sell to those customers, which enhances the website and the offerings. This is out of Collins's book about turning the flywheel.
Yep.
Which gives you increased volume per fixed cost, which allows you to lower prices. Which gives you increased volume per fixed cost, which allows you to lower prices. get more customer visits, which brings on the third parties, which makes the website more attractive, which gives you more leverage of your fixed costs, which allows you to lower your prices, which brings in more customers.
Anybody can understand that. Bezos is
But
very,
not
very
everyone
smart.
can stick to it, Brad, and that's the difference. How many times are we working with companies where it's damn simple? Oh, we need to expand to Asia. Oh, we need to vertically integrate. Or, oh, we need to do this. Or, oh, we need to get into this adjacent business. And sometimes those can be winning moves. Normally, they're not. Because they don't, there's a saying, stick to your knitting. Stick to the core things that really manage your business. I mean, I'm not saying not to expand. I'm not saying not to vertically integrate. But people get excited about them and do it in ways that create more complexity than the leadership or management can handle. And next thing you know, they're wondering why their business is painful.
It's almost like there's an elephant in the room here.
Do tell.
So you and I work for ourselves, small firms, and we work with mid-market companies. The job of large multinational consulting firms is to make things more complex.
Because then you can charge more fees if it looks more like more work and more complex. Yes.
Well, because then you can charge more hours. That's their billing model is hours.
Yep.
Okay. So so you use the phrase vertically integrate. Okay. So why does the executive say, I think we need to vertically integrate? Is that because they've got a deep understanding of the benefits of vertical integration, or because it sounds cool and I've got some emotional junk that's driving me? And how much have these large multinational organizations made things more complex? Don't get me wrong, they do amazing work. But
many of them are awesome, yes.
Awesome. There is no shortage of the impressive work that they do. But are they making things more complex than they need to be? Because the underlying business model is then they can get more consultants to come in with different things. They can make things more complex. I don't know. It's borderline. What is it called?
Conspiracy theory.
Conspiracy theory. That's what I was looking for. Borderline conspiracy theory. But we've got to deeply understand it and make it simple.
Yes.
And there is a great value to that.
There is. And, one of the things I'm very grateful for, Brad, is that I've worked in many countries around the world, as I know you have as well. And I've got to be for 25 years sitting in the boardrooms when we have those discussions and then we make the decisions.
Yeah.
And I know what happens after you say, hey, let's expand to another country. It's a beep, beep, beep show. And it usually burns between $10 and $50 million. And it's guaranteed. And it stresses out the CEO and the executives and it strains the company. And sometimes it's worth it. But unfortunately, if you haven't been there, done that before, it sounds good in the textbooks. Your friends in your fraternity or for wherever you're back home, it sounds awesome. And for you, it's exciting. I mean, hey, opening up a call center in India sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
Because you get to go to India and you might think you'll save some money. There's all kinds of hypotheses. And again, it's not about not doing these things. Don't get me wrong, but it's about having experience and mastery. And that's why one of the strategies that we do around mastery, especially when you don't have it, is to rent it. Got a chapter in my book called Quadruple Your IQ. It's darn important if you want to keep scaling. And it's to find what we call 14X advisors. 14X is another way of expressing master. What that means is they have been there and done that 14 times before. So if you're going to expand from Australia into Singapore, you need to find someone who has done something. If it's an advisor, like a lawyer or an accounting firm or whatever, a consulting firm, you want someone that's helped with that transition 14 times before as a concept. You don't want it to be their first time or their first rodeo. You don't want it to be their first time cooking a brisket on the barbecue, right? You want the experienced person. So that helps you on something. And I will give you one of our favorite strategies is not to go to the consultants, although consultants can be helpful. We believe in consultants. They can be very helpful for sourcing data you can't get, generally. But it's calling up other CEOs who've been there, done that. If you're a CEO or CFOs, call peers and say, hey, we're from Australia or we're from Canada and we're looking to move into Europe. We know you've successfully done it. I'd love to hear about your experience. Right? So there you're tapping into the wisdom and understanding it. Yeah. So that's one of the strategies that it's an underutilized strategy, very underutilized. And that's the benefit of some of these executive education programs, whether it's Harvard or INSEAD or through EO or YPO or any of the, it could be the McKay CEO forums we have here in Canada or Renaissance in the US or, Tech, the executive, all these CEO groups, you make great contacts that you can learn from your peers.
Yeah.
And that is a big missed opportunity for a lot of people. And they do what we call home baking it. All it means is you're not a master baker and you try to figure out how to make it and you don't have the wisdom to be a master. And it's so easy to get that perspective. Now, you still have to get back to the simple part, but starting with a master is usually a good way.
Yeah. So let's look to round this up. So what we're saying here broadly, if you're a mid-market business, are you falling into the trap of complexity? Are you falling into the trap of not understanding, trying to let your emotional junk dictate things that are more complex than they should, and instead perhaps being a bit more humble, understanding things deeply and saying, how can I make this as simple as possible? What else?
Yes, and taking the time to boil things down and make them simpler and simpler and simpler, which is what, again, we love the one-page strategic plan. You've got little tiny boxes with room for few words.
Yeah.
So it's taking time to work through to get it really simple. And, a company we're working with is working on what are the behaviors of the executive team that we want the executive team to live by and role model in the company. Mm-hmm. Some people would have a list of 12 or 15 or 20. It ain't going to work. No. You need to get down to the 5, 6, maybe 7 that everyone lives and breathes by, just like core values, just like the most important processes, just like the key ingredients. Back to that 80-20. And it's the time to edit and refine and simplify and make sure that you actually get the mastery. Because then it's easy to, 1, stick to, and 2, scale. And that's what most of us need. Simple things, simplicity enables scale. As long as it's smart. Yeah.
Awesome.
So that was a great conversation. And I want to phrase this. This is about salt and pepper simple. That's my new frame. We started off with the complexity of simplicity, but then we got salt and pepper simple. I like that a lot, Brad. So, hey, you guys, thanks for listening. This has been the Growth Whisperers podcast with my good friend, Brad Giles, and myself, Kevin Lawrence. You can get Brad at evolutionpartners.com.au and myself you'll find at lawrenceandco.com. We hope you have an awesome week and you yourself find a way to leverage simplicity, combine it with mastery, and allow your business to scale. Have a great one.